In today's tutorial, we will utilize Firebase real-time remote config to dynamically hide or show a button. The advantage of using Firebase in this manner is that our app doesn't need to be recompiled or submitted to the App Store. All updates can be implemented remotely through Firebase. For example, to hide the button within Firebase, we just scroll down to our config. At the moment, it's set to true for the button to be shown. But if we edit this to false and then click on save, then click publish changes, now the button will be invisible on the simulator. It's not seen on the simulator anymore. Because before we'd have to resubmit the source code to the App Store or recompile our app to do things like this. And then if we want to display our button again, we just navigate or scroll down to our config and then select true to show the button. Click on save, click on publish. And then within SwiftUI, our changes are reflected in about 5 seconds. There's the button. This is what we're creating in this tutorial. The first thing we need to do is to configure Firebase. I'll just open up a new tab. And then you have to navigate to console.firebase.google.com. Add a new project by clicking on the plus sign. Create your project name. I'll just call it Firebase Web Config Tester. Click on continue. Continue again. I'll just use the default account for Firebase. Click on create. Just creating the Firebase at the moment. Click on continue. And then, because we're creating an iOS Swift or SwiftUI application, we have to click on the iOS button here to add Firebase to our iOS application. And then we need to copy our app bundle ID, which is within the project. So you should have an empty SwiftUI project. And then just copy your bundle identifier from your project. Which is on General tab. So select your project name and then click on General or go to Sign In. You can do it that way as well. And then just copy your bundle identifier and that needs to be applied to your bundle ID within Firebase. So just paste it there. The app nickname, that can be optional, so you can leave it blank if you want to. The next thing we need to do is click on the register app button. And then we need to download Google services -info.plist. And then navigate to the downloaded file that we just downloaded, the Google services.plist, in the downloads folder. That plist we need to drag into our Firebase project, which is our SwiftUI project. Just drag it and drop it. And make sure copy items if needed is ticked. And then just click on finish button. Now we need to navigate to Firebase. And then follow the remaining instructions are there. Click on next. Then click on next again. You can just skip all of this. Click on continue to console. And now we have to create our CocoaPods file. To create the actual pods to assign to our pod file, we first need to create our pod file. To do that, we need to open up Terminal. And then type in CD. And select the blue icon at the top, your project name, and then drag it onto the terminal and delete everything between Firebase real-time remote config.xcode project. So just delete everything up to there. Click on enter. To create our empty pod file, we need to type in pod init, which means initialize the pod file. And now it's created our empty pod file, as you can see here. Or I can show it to you on the desktop within the folder, which is here. This is the pod file. So we need to add our Firebase pods to the pod file. There's many ways you can do this. I think one of the easiest ways is to just hold down the control key and then left click on your mouse, click on open with, and then we can edit it with text edit. And then we just apply our pod files. So we just type in pod. Firebase. All. pod, Firebase, Firestore, pod, that should be lowercase p, Firebase, Firestore, Swift, pod, Firebase, remote, config. Click on save. And now we need to install our pod files or assign our pod files to our project. So to do that, let's exit Xcode. And then to assign our pod file to our project, to type in pod install. And now it will attempt to install all of your pod dependencies. It's still installing at the moment. It's just taking a bit of time. It's installed now. So now the next thing we need to do is open our Xcode workspace project that should have been created after we executed those commands. So this is the one you need to open. The white one here, the one that I'm highlighting. And then the next thing we need to do is open our Firebase real-time remote config app, the main file, which includes the window group, so this file here. And then just to make sure that the pod files were installed correctly, just type in import Firebase. It should pick up the Firebase import. And just to make sure, I'll try to run it to see if it's runnable or if it crashes. If it crashes, that means CocoaPods didn't work correctly or it's not configured correctly to the project. It's just building at the moment. It's still building. As you can see, the application has now compiled, so Firebase and the pods have been assigned to the application correctly. In next week's tutorial, we'll implement the class that we'll call Firebase WebConfig. Thank you for joining us. If you found this tutorial helpful, please comment, like and subscribe. See you next week.